Okay, so today we're going somewhere pretty chilling. We're diving into a personal account, actually sent in by one of our listeners. It's about a terrifying experience in the Boundary Waters.
Oh, yeah, the Boundary Waters. Up in Minnesota, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know the area. Beautiful, but can be pretty desolate.
Absolutely. Specifically, this account focuses on an area near Lake Saginaga. And this isn't just like, a spooky campfire tale.
Right.
This is an excerpt from a first-hand account, apparently written from a hospital bed in Duluth. The writer claims to have suffered extreme hypothermia.
Makes sense. It gets brutally cold up there, especially if you're not prepared.
Yeah, and what medical professionals have termed stress-induced psychosis.
Wow. So already we're dealing with some pretty intense psychological and physical factors.
Yeah, but get this. Even with all that, he insists that what happened to him out there was real.
Okay, so he's acknowledging the physical and psychological strain, but still maintains that there was something more to it. I'm intrigued.
Me too. And his message is a warning. Straight up, steer clear of an old military outpost near Lake Saginaga.
Oh, this is getting good. I love a good abandoned military outpost story. So what exactly did this guy encounter?
That's what we're here to find out. Was it a genuine, supernatural encounter? A complete psychological breakdown brought on by being alone out there?
Right.
Or something else entirely that we haven't even considered?
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's unpack this.
So our listener who sent this in, they're like a lot of our listeners,
Right.
wants to get to the heart of this quickly.
Efficiently.
Efficiently, yeah. Loves those surprising facts.
Of course, who doesn't?
But doesn't want to get bogged down,
Right. Keep it focused.
Focus. So that's what we're going to do. We're diving deep into this chilling narrative, pulling out the key details, and seeing what insights we can glean from it.
Sounds like a plan. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so first let's set the scene. The writer describes himself as a travel writer with 15 years of experience guiding in wilderness areas. He specializes in remote destinations. So right off the bat, we know this isn't some city slicker who got lost in the woods.
Like, this is a guy who knows his way around the backcountry. He's familiar with the risks, the isolation. That makes his account even more intriguing. What could shake a seasoned wilderness guide like that?
Yeah. And even the journey to his destination is kind of unsettling. He talks about the increasingly narrow roads of northern Minnesota, the dense forest canopy pressing in, that feeling of claustrophobia even before anything really strange happens.
Oh, yeah, I can totally picture that. It's like the wilderness is slowly closing in around you.
Exactly. And he eventually reaches Grand Marais, the last stop for supplies. And here's where things take the first weird turn.
Okay, lay it on me.
He meets this old man at the supply store.
Oh, I knew it. There's always an old man with a warning. It's like a rule of these kinds of stories.
Right, and this guy doesn't disappoint. He tells the writer to stay away from the old buildings near Saginaga. Classic creepy old man advice, right?
For sure. So what kind of old buildings are we talking about? Is it clear from the account?
Not specifically, but the way the old man says it, you get the feeling it's not like a charming abandoned cabin or something.
Right. Definitely ominous vibes.
And the old man gives another warning. He tells the writer not to answer or acknowledge any sounds he hears at night.
Oh, that's spooky. So what, like animal sounds? Or...
He specifically mentions voices that call in the night.
Whoa. Okay, now that's unsettling.
The writer, he's been around, seen a lot, so he kind of brushes it off as local folklore at first. But you have to wonder if it stuck with him, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even if you try to dismiss it as superstition, that kind of warning has a way of getting under your skin.
Yeah.
Especially when you're alone out in the middle of nowhere.
Totally. So the writer finds a spot for his RV overlooking a lake that feeds into Saginaga. Seems like a perfect spot, right? Peaceful, secluded.
Picture perfect. The calm before the storm.
But even on this first night, there's a sense of unease in his description. He talks about how the silence was unnatural, like the wilderness was holding its breath.
Ooh, that's such a vivid image. That feeling of anticipation, like something's about to happen.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, does being in that kind of isolation heighten your senses? Make you more likely to interpret normal things as creepy?
That's a good question. I mean, when everything is so quiet, even the slightest sound or movement can seem magnified. Your brain is on high alert, looking for any potential threat.
Yeah. So it's about 3:17 a.m. when the writer is suddenly awakened by a woman's voice calling his name.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah, it's faint but clear. And he recognizes the voice. It's his ex-wife, Lisa.
No way. What are the chances?
Right. And then moments later, there's a louder plea for help, also sounding like Lisa.
Okay, that's just straight up terrifying. I mean, even if you're not inclined to believe in the supernatural, that's a really disturbing experience.
No kidding. It would freak anyone out.
Yeah, especially miles from civilization in the dead of night. To hear someone you know calling for help, that's nightmare fuel right there.
Totally. And the next morning, things get even weirder.
Oh no, what now?
He finds footprints outside his RV. But not just any footprints. They're barefoot, human-like prints, but huge, with these long, elongated toes.
Okay, now we're getting into some Bigfoot territory.
Yeah, and the prints circle his RV and then abruptly stop at the water's edge.
So whatever made them, it didn't come from the land and it didn't go back onto the land. It just disappeared into the water.
Yeah, like it walked out of the lake, circled his RV, and then walked back into the lake.
That is so creepy. Did he get any pictures of the footprints?
He tried, but his camera wouldn't capture them.
That's weird. You know, that often happens in these kinds of stories, right?
Yeah, it's like whatever is causing this wants to stay hidden.
Exactly. And on top of all that, his satellite phone signal dies. Completely gone, even though the weather is clear.
It's like he's being cut off from the outside world.
Deliberately isolated. Okay, I'm definitely getting some bad vibes here.
Me too. All this strange stuff leads him to check out the abandoned military outpost he'd seen on his map. It's about 2 miles north of his campsite.
Okay, so this is where things might start making sense. Or get even creepier.
Right. This outpost was used for cold weather training during World War II, but later it was repurposed for classified research, and then in the 1970s it was just abandoned.
Interesting. So what kind of classified research are we talking about? Does he give any details?
Not initially, but there are some hints as he gets closer. He notices the doors to the main building are slightly ajar, like someone might have been there recently. And there's this rusted sign that says, Project Threshold and Psychological Research Unit.
Psychological Research Unit.
Oh.
Man, that sends shivers down my spine. What exactly were they researching?
Well, that's what he's trying to figure out. Inside the main building, he finds these isolation chambers, like small rooms meant for solitary confinement.
Oh, wow, that's creepy. Like something out of a horror movie.
There are tallies scratched into the walls, probably marking the days someone was trapped inside.
Oh, that's just sad and disturbing. Can you imagine? Alone in that small space for days on end.
And one chamber has this inscription, "They come through when you're alone."
Whoa. Okay, that's terrifying. And way too coincidental, considering the old man's warning about the voices.
Right, and under the inscription, there's this crude drawing of a doorway with shadowy figures on either side. It's like something out of a nightmare.
Totally. So was this just some crazy rambling from a research subject? Or was there something more to it?
That's the question, isn't it? And then he finds the director's office, and in the office, there's a journal.
Of course there is. It's like finding the creepy journal is mandatory in these stories.
The last entry is dated November 1974. It says, Subject 11 reports multiple entities now, claims they're mimicking staff voices. Psychiatric evaluation recommended, but phenomena observed by 2 researchers as well. Sullivan insists we continue. God help us.
Hold on. So not only was the subject experiencing something strange, but the researchers witnessed it too.
Yeah, that's what the entry suggests. And it specifically mentions the entities mimicking staff voices, which is super creepy considering what the writer has already experienced with his ex-wife's voice.
Oh yeah, this is getting really unsettling. So whatever they were researching at Project Threshold, it seems like they might have stumbled onto something they couldn't control.
Something that maybe followed them home or stayed behind.
Right, and the writer just walked right into the middle of it.
And as he starts to head back to his RV, things get even more intense. He feels like he's being watched.
Okay, I'm getting chills just listening to this.
And he hears whispers of his name coming from the woods around him.
Oh God, that's just classic horror movie stuff.
And then, as he moves further away from the outpost, the whispers turn into voices. And not just random voices.
Oh no, who is it now?
His ex-wife, his deceased father, a friend, even voices he doesn't recognize, each one calling out to him, saying things that only they would know.
So it's not just voices, it's voices pretending to be people he knows, using information from his life.
Right, like something is trying to manipulate him.
This is seriously messed up.
He finally makes it back to his RV, locks himself inside.
Thank God, some semblance of safety.
You would think, right. But the voices don't stop. They get louder, more insistent.
Oh, come on. That's relentless.
Like whatever is doing this is surrounding the RV, trying to get to him. And then things get even weirder. the temperature inside the RV plummets.
Right, like out of nowhere.
Yeah, and frost starts forming inside, even though there's no logical reason for it.
That's just bizarre. Definitely beyond any rational explanation.
And then there's this scratching sound coming from the walls.
Oh, no. Please tell me it wasn't like fingernails on a chalkboard.
He describes it as sounding like fingernails scraping against the metal.
Oh, God, that's just, I don't even know. This is too much.
And then the voices change again. They start speaking in a language he doesn't understand.
Okay, so now we're going full-on Lovecraftian horror. The language of the old ones, right?
Something like that. He describes it as the language of the forgotten.
The language of the forgotten. Okay, that's just poetry. And terrifying poetry.
He says it's a language that demands fear and isolation, and that the entities speaking it call themselves Watchers Between Worlds.
Watchers Between Worlds? That's some heavy stuff. And it suggests that whatever he's dealing with, it's not just confined to our reality.
And then, as if the voices weren't enough, he sees them.
Sees them? What, like full-blown apparitions?
Not exactly. They're more like shadows outside his RV. Tall, thin figures with long, elongated limbs.
Oh, man, those footprints. It all connects.
Right. It's like the things that made those prints are now stalking him.
This is a full-on nightmare.
At some point during the night, he either falls asleep or maybe passes out from exhaustion and fear, and he has this incredibly vivid dream.
Or was it a dream?
Exactly. He describes this alternate reality with organic, almost sentient trees surrounding a black, still lake.
Okay, that's just surreal.
And the shadow figures are there. But in the dream, they tell him they were once human.
Oh, so they weren't always these things.
They claim they became these watchers between worlds after some kind of dimensional breach.
So they're like refugees from another reality, or victims of some cosmic accident.
It's not entirely clear.
But either way, that's a pretty messed up origin story.
Yeah, and when he wakes up, the RV door is open.
He said he locked it though, right?
He's adamant about that, and there are fresh footprints in the snow. His footprints, leading to and from the lake.
What? But he doesn't remember going outside.
Not at all. It's like he sleepwalked or something, but he's never done that before.
It's like something took control of him, drew him to the lake.
And then there's the black stone. He finds it on the counter inside his RV. He says it's impossibly cold, and it has this pattern on it that looks like a doorway.
A doorway? It's like the one in the drawing from the isolation chamber.
Yeah, it's too much of a coincidence, right?
Definitely. It's like something is trying to tell him something. Or maybe lead him somewhere.
But where? And why?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
He tries to leave, tries to start his RV, but the battery is dead.
Of course it is. Nothing can be easy in this story.
He tries the hand crank, but it won't budge.
Like something is holding him there.
And his satellite phone still has no signal.
He's trapped.
And then a blizzard hits.
Oh no, of all the times.
He's stuck in this RV, surrounded by these voices, with this creepy black stone. But he knows if he stays, something bad is going to happen.
So he has to choose between the devil he knows and the devil he doesn't.
He decides to risk it and try to hike out during the blizzard.
That's a dangerous move.
Incredibly dangerous. And the entire time he's hiking, the voices are taunting him, threatening him.
Oh man, I bet that messed with his head.
And at one point, he hears his father's voice.
But his father is
Deceased. The voice promises him shelter, tries to lure him off the trail.
That's just cruel, to use his father's voice like that.
It shows how insidious these things are, how they prey on your deepest vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that's some next-level psychological warfare.
As he's hiking, he's suddenly tackled, pulled to the ground.
One of those shadow creatures.
He thinks so. He manages to get his knife out and stabs at it.
Did he kill it?
He's not sure. He said it felt like stabbing through thick fog.
Oh, wow. So, not a solid physical being.
Whatever it was, it let go of him. And he's eventually found by a logging truck driver, delirious, screaming about voices in the trees.
So he survives, but at what cost?
That's the question, right? What was this a complete mental breakdown brought on by the isolation and the suggestive environment?
Or did he actually encounter something beyond our understanding, something that exists in the spaces between realities?
It's impossible to say for sure based on his account alone, but it's a chilling reminder that there are still places in this world where the lines between what we perceive as real and what lies beyond are blurry at best.
Places where the veil is thin and perhaps sometimes it tears.
And what happens to those who find themselves on the other side of that tier?
That's the question that keeps me up at night.
Me too. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. And to our listeners, maybe think twice before dismissing those old local legends. They might be based on something very real.
And maybe, just maybe, it's best to let some secrets stay buried.
Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay safe out there.
Okay, so you know how we love to get deep dive suggestions from our listeners?
Yeah.
Well, this one really caught our attention. We got a message from a listener, totally fascinated by some pretty out there stories from up in northern Minnesota, around Crane Lake and in a place they call the Devil's Chair.
Yeah, and this listener, they pointed us to this first-person account. The title alone kind of grabs your eye. Like, I'll never go RV camping in northern Minnesota again. And it's written by someone who is currently, residing at a behavioral health center up in Duluth.
Yeah, it's not every day we come across something like this. This author claims they were actually hunted by something while they were out photographing the Aurora Borealis. And this wasn't just some random sighting, this was during the autumn equinox. They had planned this whole trip specifically for this. And what's really striking is they are absolutely certain that what they experienced wasn't just, a hallucination or something.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through this account with you all, like piece by piece. Yep. We'll look at the details and see if anything has a kind of conventional explanation. But I think we're really going to focus on the stuff that just makes you think beyond the everyday. And we're going to stick to the author's narrative, like chronologically, how it all unfolded.
Okay, so at the beginning, we get this picture of the author as a pretty seasoned photographer, definitely comfortable, like going off the grid, venturing out there. They had this custom Ford Transit camper van, all trekked out, so they could be self-sufficient for a while. Like this wasn't their first rodeo out in the wilderness or anything.
Right, and that's a pretty important detail, isn't it? We're not talking about someone who's, going to spook easily out in the woods. And the trip itself was planned really specifically for September 22nd, the autumn equinox. Why that date?
Yeah, so Chapter 1's even titled The Perfect Shot. It's all about capturing the Aurora Borealis. And they knew their stuff. The autumn equinox, plus they had forecasts for a huge solar storm and a moonless night. It's like perfect conditions for photographing the aurora. They picked a spot near Crane Lake, which is part of the Superior National Forest, like right up against the Canadian border, seeking solitude for their artistic endeavors or whatever.
And they did mention that there were like local legends about this area, but they kind of brushed it off as just folklore, at least at first.
Yeah.
But that becomes kind of a bigger deal later as the story unfolds.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So on the way to Crane Lake, they stopped for gas in this little town called Orr. And this is where things get kind of weird right away. Like the gas station attendant, this older guy, he seemed genuinely worried when he heard where they were headed, the north shore of Crane Lake, and especially that it was the equinox. He even warned them, told them not to go alone, mentioned strange things happening, and even said something like, the lights not being what they seem.
Yeah.
It's got to be foreshadowing, right?
It definitely sets the mood, But the author is, really focused on getting those aurora shots. And so they kind of chalk it up to small town superstitions. The kind of tall tales that you get in isolated places. They even said something about camping in grizzly bear territory, like it was no big deal. So they're confident and maybe a little bit skeptical of the local lore.
Totally. They're on a mission for the perfect aurora shot. So to get to their campsite, they had to drive these increasingly rough back roads. And eventually they get to this clearing overlooking Crane Lake. They make a point of saying, there's no one else around, no other campers, no lights from across the lake. It's super isolated.
And that first night, everything is just how they wanted it. Clear skies, amazing aurora, perfect conditions. They spend hours photographing it. It's like a peaceful, idyllic night out in the wilderness.
For sure. Until we get to the chapter called Strange Reflections. Mm-hmm. It's around midnight and things start to feel different. They're focusing on the green hues of the aurora. And then, bam, a bright blue flash of light from the forest nearby. Did that jump out at you?
Oh, for sure. It's the first thing that's like truly strange. Doesn't fit with anything else.
Right.
So they thought maybe it's like a blue aurora. That's pretty rare. But their photographer instincts take over and they start taking a bunch of long exposure shots of it. They want to document it, even if it's unexpected.
But then later, looking back at the pictures, that's when things get really creepy. There's this shape in the trees. It's glowing blue-white, and it's sort of kind of humanoid. You know what I mean? It's that vagueness that makes it so eerie.
Totally. And they try to explain it away at first. Think maybe it's something wrong with the photo or a trick of the light, a long exposure thing.
Yeah.
They even delete the picture because they don't want it messing up their aurora shots. They're still grounded, at least at this point, not jumping to supernatural conclusions.
Right. But even after the aurora fades, they can't shake this feeling of being watched, like something's not right. And then the next morning, it's even worse. They talk about this like unnatural silence in the forest. No birds, no wind in the leaves, just completely still. Have you ever experienced that kind of silence in nature?
Oh, yeah. It can be really unsettling. It's like all the sounds you expect are gone. It's like a void. And that makes any little noise or feeling stand out. And in this case, I think it added to the author's unease. Big time.
Yeah. So they're feeling uneasy and kind of wanting to explore. So they head into the woods. There's this faint trail, all overgrown. And it leads them to this old trapper's cabin. Looks abandoned, but it's in really good shape. It's weird, right?
Yeah, it's strange that it's abandoned but not falling apart, like somebody left in a hurry or something. And what they find inside is really important. A bunch of old photographs. Not just any photos, pictures of the exact spot where they're camped. Going way back. Decades.
And get this, one photo, super faded, probably from the early 1900s. It shows a couple standing in that same clearing, but between them, floating in the air, this weird bright blur. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, it's totally like the shape the author photographed the night before. I mean, come on, that's not a coincidence. It's like this pattern, this thing happening over and over in the same place for a long time. It's not just one weird event anymore. This is something else.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So the author nopes out of that cabin pretty quick. They're trying to stay rational. Maybe the old photo was just damaged, creating that weird shape. But they're definitely starting to doubt their own skepticism. So they keep exploring and end up at this landmark that the gas station guy mentioned, the Devil's Chair. It's this huge boulder shaped like a seat, naturally.
And remember, the gas station guy specifically linked the Devil's Chair to the weird stuff happening around the equinox. So the author gets there and sees all these strange symbols carved into the rock, not like any alphabet or indigenous symbols. And they said the carvings were shimmering. That's creepy, right?
Oh, yeah, super creepy. It's not just the symbols, it's that they're like moving almost.
Oh.
So later back at the camper, they're looking at the photos they took. Every picture of the symbols, it's got this faint blue glow around them.
Yeah, and that's not just a camera glitch. That's consistent across all the photos. And then it gets even worse. One of the photos, in the background, half hidden behind a tree, there's that elongated figure again. The one from the first night. It's like it's attached to this place.
And then the chapter's called Warning Signs, and things get so much worse so fast. This super thick fog rolls in, totally out of season, and the temperature drops like crazy. It's like everything's closing in. Have you ever had the weather change like that on you in the wilderness?
Yeah, and it's disorienting. You feel super exposed. So the author goes back to the camper, trying to feel normal, looking at their photos. But even in the pictures, things are messed up. The symbols on the Devil's Chair are still blurred. In that figure, it's like it's moving slightly between photos.
It's like whatever's happening, it's messing with the photos themselves.
Right.
Not just what they show. And then the author notices something in the aurora photos from the first night, something they totally missed before.
Yeah. So remember those long exposures of the aurora. In those photos, there are these blue-white figures. In each photo, they're closer and closer to the camera. In the last one, there's like a dozen of them right outside the campsite, staring right at the author. Pretty freaky, right?
Totally freaky. And the author says they have no memory of seeing these figures while they were taking the pictures. And the timestamps on the photos, they're all in order. Like these figures were slowly approaching. That gives me chills.
Yeah, me too. So at this point, they're freaking out, trying to contact someone. They try their satellite messenger, but it won't connect. The weather radio is just static. And then even weirder, the radio starts picking up these whispers. And then things in the camper start to go haywire. The lights flicker, the heater acts up, like everything is breaking down.
And it's all happening at the same time as the weird figures and the fog. It makes you think that whatever's happening is affecting more than just the author, right? Like messing with the environment or something.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic stuff, maybe?
For sure. It's beyond just one person's perception at this point. So it's dark, the fog is thick, and they decide to stay in the camper. Seems like the safest option, right? And that's when they start hearing the tapping. At first, it's gentle on the windows, but it gets louder and more aggressive. It's like banging on all sides of the camper. That escalation is what really gets me.
I know. It's like the weird stuff is getting closer and closer, more real, more threatening. And then after the pounding, it gets quiet. But then there's this whispering right outside the camper. Like these things are trying to talk to the author, but they're just out of reach. What would you do if you heard that?
I mean, that's terrifying. You know something's there, but you can't see it. And then the author wakes up and there's a new folder on their laptop labeled See, and inside, pictures of the author sleeping from angles that don't make sense. And in the pictures, those glowing figures are all around them. It's like they're being watched, spied on.
Totally. And it means these things aren't just in the author's head. They're real. And they're messing with technology. That's just so creepy. So the next morning, things are really bad. The last chapter of the author's account is called The Invitation. The camper battery is dead. The engine won't start. And the fog's still there. They're trapped.
Totally trapped. And to make it worse, their escape plan of just hiking out is ruined. Because imagine being out in that fog and running into those figures. They're real. They're out there.
And then the frost. The inside of the camper gets freezing cold, and on the windows, the frost starts forming into those symbols, the ones from the devil's chair. And then it forms words, a message. Come to the chair. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, there's definitely a direct message, a command almost. And the fact that it's written in frost on the window, that's so unnatural. It's like something is controlling the environment.
Yeah, so the author feels like they have no choice. They go out into the fog, heading for the devil's chair. And as they're walking, a path clears in the fog, leading right to the chair. It's like they're being led there. And at the chair, they encounter the figure. It's sitting on the rock, but they can't describe it. They say it's not solid, but not completely see-through either. How do you even wrap your head around that?
It's like it's something beyond our normal understanding. The fact that they can't describe it visually is really telling. And then they communicate. But telepathically, the figure tells them about the crossing and about the author's role in connecting realities. This is where those local legends get really dark.
Yeah, for real. The figure shows the author visions, images of people disappearing in the area going way back, ancient rituals. It's messed up. They get this idea that these things are trapped between dimensions and that their photographs are somehow making them stronger, helping them connect to our world. It's a crazy explanation, but it kind of fits with everything else that's happened.
Right. Like, they're saying that the glaciers moving around created some kind of dimensional rift, and events like the equinox make the connection stronger. And the author's photos, it's like you're focusing energy or something and helping these entities interact with our reality.
And then the author sees a portal opening. They catch a glimpse of other things waiting to come through. Really scary stuff. And then something simple happens, and it changes everything. A ray of sunlight hits the figure, and it recoils, like it's hurt.
Interesting.
Right, like sunlight is their weakness.
Yeah, it's like they can't fully exist in our world. They're vulnerable to something natural. So the author makes a run for it, back to the camper. They're being chased. The fog is grabbing at them. They hear voices, but they're not real. They sound like loved ones, but it's a trick.
And then, out of nowhere, the camper starts. The engine turns over. It's like pure luck. Or maybe something helped them. They look in the rearview mirror and see the figures disappearing back into the fog. That must have been terrifying.
And then they run into a Forest Service ranger, which is interesting because it gives the story some outside proof. The ranger sees how freaked out the author is. But even more than that, there's one photo left on the memory card. It shows the author sitting on the devil's chair, surrounded by the figures. Their eyes are glowing blue. That image really happened. The ranger saw it too.
Which leads us to now. The author is in that behavioral health center. The doctors probably think they imagined everything. But the author knows what they saw. They're afraid they're marked somehow. And they say they keep seeing the figures in photos they take. Like these things are following them.
And their warning is really stark. Stay away from the devil's chair, especially around the winter solstice when the connection is strongest. Don't camp alone. If you see blue lights, run, and never, ever take their picture.
So here's something to think about. We have this detailed account, and the ranger saw that photo. Could the legends about Crane Lake be more than just stories? What could explain the strange lights and the people disappearing? Is there something else out there in another dimension trying to break through? It's a creepy thought, and it definitely makes you wonder what's really out there in the wilderness. Okay, so you know how we do things here on the Deep Dive, right?
Sure.
You send us stuff and we dig in deep and try to figure out what's really going on. And this time you guys really outdid yourselves. I mean, this is something else.
Definitely something else. Yeah, I mean, when we talk about going deep, this is about as deep and as strange as it gets.
Yeah, no kidding. So we're tackling this document you sent us called Nuvo1.txt, which is supposedly a first-hand account from this guy, Marcus Kelly, who says he's some sort of folklore and paranormal researcher.
Right, and what really makes this one so interesting is that it's not just like some old folklore story or, a dry historical account. You know what I mean? It's like this personal story, this narrative that's all mixed up with some pretty disturbing claims about things that supposedly happened in Pine Point, Minnesota.
Yeah, and I mean, disturbing is putting it mildly, right? So what we're going to try to do in this deep dive is like really go through Kelly's account step by step and see if we can piece together like what happened in Pine Point, just based on what he's telling us.
Yeah, exactly. We're taking him at his word for now and just seeing where that leads us.
Right, and it's a wild ride, just to be clear. We're talking about local history mixed with Kelly's like personal experiences, which get weirder and weirder as we go along. And then on top of that, there are these claims that are like, well, they kind of defy explanation, to be honest.
That's one way to put it.
So where does Kelly even start with all this? He doesn't just jump into the ghost stories or whatever, right?
No, he actually takes the time to kind of set the stage first. He wants us to know that he's a serious researcher. So he talks about his background and how he's, really focused on meticulously researched historical accounts, especially when it comes to folklore and paranormal stuff.
Right. So he's like establishing his credentials, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just some cook. I actually know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wants to come across as credible, especially given what he's about to describe.
And the thing is, he's writing all this from a hospital room, which immediately makes you think, okay, something bad went down.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a red flag right from the start.
Yeah. And he even mentions these unexplained burns that he has and says his memory is fading. It's like we're getting this urgent message from someone who's maybe not going to be around much longer, and there's this feeling that he really needs to warn people about something.
That urgency definitely comes through. It makes you lean in and pay attention.
Sure. So this urgency is all tied to this research that led him to Pine Point, right?
Right. And what he's looking into is this pattern of disappearances in abandoned settlements all across the region.
Okay, so like ghost towns, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But Pine Point, this old logging community that's basically been forgotten, stood out to him because he says there's this unusual number of vanishings that have happened there, going all the way back to the 1870s and continuing even to the present day.
Wow, so over like a century and a half of people just disappearing? That's creepy.
Yeah, and what really hooked him specifically was this case from 2019 where a group of urban explorers went missing at this old sanatorium in Pine Point.
So like relatively recently.
Yeah, very recent. I mean, think about it. Those explorers, their car and all their equipment was found, but there was no sign of them. No bodies, nothing. And that, on top of all the stories about Pine Point, well, it makes sense that Kelly would be drawn to that kind of mystery.
Yeah, for sure. So Kelly gets to Pine Point in October, and he starts by describing the place, right?
Yeah, he paints a picture of this isolated logging community kind of tucked away in this slight depression surrounded by wetlands and dense forest. It's like a place where secrets could easily stay hidden, Yeah,
it sounds pretty eerie right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then there are all these remnants of the settlement, the collapsed church scattered foundations, all leading up to what he calls the imposing ruins of the sanatorium.
Oh, yeah. And he uses some pretty vivid imagery when he describes it, too. He talks about the sanatorium's windows being empty and dark, like hollow eye sockets.
Yeah, I remember that line. It's chilling.
Yeah.
Gives you this immediate sense of foreboding, like the place itself is watching you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely sets the mood. And you have to remember, Kelly is a researcher, right? So even though he's clearly creeped out, he goes about setting up his mobile workstation, his Airstream RV. It's like he's creating this little bubble of normalcy in this increasingly strange place.
Right, like he's trying to hold on to some kind of control in this situation.
Yeah.
And then he starts digging into the local history, right? He goes to the Historical Society and tries to find out more about Pine Point and the sanatorium.
Exactly. And he finds out that the sanatorium was built in 1891 as a treatment facility for tuberculosis, which was a huge problem back then. But then later on in 1912, after the TB epidemic died down, they converted it into an orphanage.
Okay, so this place has seen its fair share of suffering already.
Absolutely. But the really interesting thing is what Kelly finds out about the orphanage's closure. It was shut down abruptly in 1932 after a state investigation.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It doesn't. And what's even more suspicious is that Kelly says the details of that investigation are basically missing from the public records. It's like someone tried to sweep the whole thing under the rug.
Yeah, that's a major red flag right there. Makes you wonder what they were trying to hide.
No.
And the broader history of Pine Point itself is pretty fascinating too, right? I mean, It was originally settled by Finnish immigrants, then it had this logging boom, and then it was hit hard by the tuberculosis epidemic in the 1890s, which basically led to everyone abandoning the place except for the sanatorium.
Yeah, it's a story of boom and bust. I mean, so many settlements in that area followed a similar trajectory. But Pine Point with the sanatorium and then the orphanage, it seems like tragedy just kept clinging to that place.
And then there's the fact that the orphanage housed children from all over the state, including Native American children who were taken from their families. That adds another layer of sadness and even trauma to the whole story, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you think about the weight of history and how it might be connected to the strange events that Kelly describes later on.
For sure. So all that's just the setup, right? Then things start to get really weird on Kelly's first night in Pine Point. He hears children laughing, but not in a good way. He describes it as being too hollow, too rhythmic, almost rehearsed.
Yeah, it's that unnatural quality that really gets you. Like something's just off about it.
Exactly. And then the moment he goes to investigate, the sound just stops dead silence.
Classic horror movie stuff.
Totally. It immediately makes you wonder if he's really alone out there.
No kidding. And things only escalate from there. He mentions having trouble sleeping that night, and he hears this tapping on the side of his RV, like little hands drumming on the metal.
Oh, that would freak me out. And then there's that whispered message he hears in the middle of the night. He's here to help us, just like the doctor promised.
And he swears he was completely alone when he heard it.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I'd be packing my bags and getting out of there as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But Kelly's a researcher, so he sticks around.
He's dedicated, that's for sure. But you do have to wonder what's going through his mind at this point.
Right.
Like, is he starting to doubt his own sanity? Is he questioning if this is all real?
Right, because it's one thing to research the paranormal, but it's another thing entirely to experience it firsthand. And then he has this vivid dream about masked children in hospital gowns surrounding his bed, staring at him with these unnaturally bright eyes.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying. It's like his subconscious is trying to process all this strangeness, all this unsettling history, and it's coming out in these disturbing images.
And then the thing that really pushes it over the edge,
Yeah.
the thing that you just can't explain away,
Yeah.
is what he finds the next morning. He discovers this perfect circle of 37 barefoot children's footprints all around his RV, all facing inwards.
And there's no sign of how they got there or how they left. No tracks leading in or out. It's just impossible.
Yeah, and that number 37, it sticks with you, right? It's like a clue, a recurring motif that keeps popping up throughout his account.
It definitely feels significant, like it's pointing to something important.
So even though he's encountering all these bizarre and frankly terrifying things, Kelly keeps going with his investigation. He decides to explore the sanatorium ruins.
And it's like stepping back in time, right? He describes this main entrance hall that's surprisingly well preserved with these beautiful tile murals depicting scenes from nature, which is kind of ironic considering what the building was actually used for.
Yeah, it's this weird contrast between beauty and suffering. And then he explores the patient rooms with their rusted bed frames and the isolation ward, which is just completely dilapidated. It's like this tangible reminder of the pain and isolation that must have happened within those walls.
And then he finds that message scratched into the wall safe in the administrator's office, "They are not children anymore."
That's the line that really sends chills down your spine.
Yeah.
It changes everything, right? It implies that something happened to those children, something that transformed them into something else entirely.
It takes the whole investigation in a much darker direction. And then Kelly decides to take a trip to Detroit Lakes to do some more research, and he ends up talking to this waitress who has a personal connection to the sanatorium. Her grandmother worked there as a nurse's aide.
And her reaction when he mentions Pine Point is pretty telling, right?
Oh yeah, she climbs up immediately. She's like, "Don't talk about that place. There's nothing good there. It's all bad memories."
And it turns out her grandmother had these recurring nightmares about the orphanage. And she specifically warned her never to go there during the new moon.
Yeah, that's like straight out of folklore, isn't it? It's like this generational knowledge that's been passed down about the dangers of Pine Point.
It adds this layer of local belief and fear to the whole story. Like, it's not just Kelly's imagination. Something is really going on there.
So naturally, Kelly being Kelly decides that the upcoming new moon is the perfect time to conduct an EVP session at the sanatorium.
Even after all the warnings. Talk about dedication to your research. Right. It's like, dude, you've been hearing whispers, seeing creepy footprints, and having nightmares, but you're going to go back there during the time when everyone says it's the most dangerous.
It's a bold move, that's for sure.
Understatement of the year. So while he's preparing for his EVP session, he does some more digging in the Detroit Lakes Public Library. He finds some vague mentions of the orphanage closure in the microfiche records. They blame it on health and safety concerns, but there are no real details.
Yeah, classic cover-up language. But then he stumbles on this newspaper article from September 1932, and the headline is, "State investigation continues as search for missing children enters third week." It turns out that 11 children vanished from the orphanage over a single weekend.
Wow, that's huge. And the article quotes the orphanage doctor, Dr. Moorhead, who tries to downplay the whole thing. He says the kids probably just ran away. But then there's a quote from the state investigator who says they found some pretty disturbing stuff in the medical records, that he has serious questions about the treatment these children received.
Yeah, that definitely suggests something more sinister was going on than just some kids running away.
And then Kelly makes another disturbing discovery. He finds the settlement cemetery, and it's completely overgrown and neglected, with most of the headstones being for children. Many of them are just marked with numbers, which is just heartbreaking.
It's a stark reminder of how many young lives were lost in that place. And then he comes across a mass grave with an inscription that reads, "In memory of the 37 children lost to us, may they find in heaven the peace denied them in life 1932.
37 again. That number is just everywhere.
Yeah.
And it directly connects back to the footprints he found earlier.
It's like a puzzle piece clicking into place, right? Suddenly everything becomes a lot more real, a lot more disturbing.
And at that moment, standing there in front of the mass grave, things start to get really intense. He describes this sudden drop in temperature. His camera battery dies for no reason, and his phone freezes over with this weird fractal frost.
Like the environment itself is reacting to his presence and to his discovery.
Yeah, and then he goes back to his RV, looking for some sense of normalcy, and he finds that his research papers have been rearranged into 37 little piles.
Okay, now that's creepy. It's like whatever he encountered at the cemetery followed him back and is now messing with him directly.
And remember he said those windows were like hollow eye sockets? I'm starting to think he wasn't that far off.
Yeah, it's not just random occurrences anymore. It feels deliberate, like something is trying to communicate with him.
So the night of the new moon arrives, and Kelly decides to go ahead with his EVP session at the cemetery, despite all the warnings and everything he's experienced.
This guy is either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless.
Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah.
So he sets up his equipment near the mass grave, and things immediately start to go wrong. He reports extreme cold spots, and his thermal camera is picking up human-shaped figures even though there's no one there.
It's like the energy is building up, right? Like something is about to happen.
And then he starts recording his EVPs, and what he captures is just bone-chilling. They're these faint voices, children's voices, and they're saying things like, "The doctor said he could fix us, but he lied." And because they found some of the bodies, but not all of us.
And then there's that chorus of voices that just sends chills down your spine.
Yeah.
The forgotten ones, the changeable ones, the ones he made better but worse.
It's haunting. And it really makes you think about what Dr. Moorhead was doing to these children, what kind of experiments he was conducting.
It sounds like he was trying to alter them in some way to improve them, but it clearly backfired horribly.
And then the voices stop and things escalate even further. Kelly's equipment starts shorting out, he's plunged into darkness, and then he sees them, these 37 small, glowing figures.
The ones from the footprints.
Yeah, and his description of them is terrifying. He says they have distorted proportions, surgical scars, limbs that look like they were reattached incorrectly. They're wearing these old blood-stained hospital gowns, and their eyes are glowing unnaturally bright.
It's like something out of a nightmare.
Totally. And then they all speak in unison saying, "To show you what he did to us, to make you like us."
Ugh, that's so creepy. And he says there's this smell of antiseptic and copper in the air. It's like a hospital mixed with something metallic, something wrong.
And then they take a step closer towards him and say, "The doctor said we were imperfect. He said he could make us better, stronger. He said the pain was necessary for transcendence."
It's like they're both victims and a threat at the same time.
Exactly. And at that point, Kelly freaks out, runs back to his RV. He hears this weird skittering sound chasing him. And when he gets to the RV, the figures are already there. They're pressing against the walls, denting the metal, and frost starts forming inside, spelling out the words, "Help US, finish the change."
It's like they want to use him for something to complete their transformation, whatever that might be.
And then the lights go out the door, unlocks and opens, and he feels these ice-cold hands touching him, burning him with cold staler. It's a full-on attack.
That's the turning point, right? It goes from creepy and unsettling to outright dangerous.
Yeah, and somehow Kelly manages to find a UV flashlight in his RV, and he discovers that the light repels the figures. It's like his only weapon against them.
It gives him a fighting chance, at least for a little while.
So he jumps into his RV and drives away as fast as he can. He's hitting figures as he drives, feeling these bursts of intense cold. And then right before he blacks out, he sees a child's face pressed up against the windshield with these needle-like teeth.
That's the last thing he remembers.
Yeah, and then he wakes up 3 days later in the hospital, and he's been changed. He has these horrific frostbite burns all over his body. His hair has turned white. He's suddenly wrinkled, and his fingers had to be amputated. It's like he aged decades in just a few days.
The physical toll of that encounter is undeniable.
Yeah.
And the thing is, throughout this whole ordeal, he's been clutching his digital voice recorder, and it's survived.
Yeah.
He still has the recordings of that night at the cemetery.
And those recordings are the key to understanding everything that happened right. They reveal the truth about Dr. Moorhead and his experiments. They talk about how Moorhead was obsessed with improving human evolution, and he thought he could achieve that through surgery and these experimental drug therapies.
He was basically trying to force these children to evolve using research he got from post-World War I government projects.
Yeah, and those 37 children who died weren't just victims of negligence or mistreatment. They were Moorhead's successes in his twisted mind. They were the ones he managed to change, but the change was so drastic that they were no longer human.
They became something else, something that exists between worlds, something that's only visible under certain conditions, like during the new moon.
And they're still transforming. They're not finished. And they believe that they need a living human to help them complete their transformation, which is why they were so drawn to Kelly. He was the key to their evolution in their minds.
And now Kelly believes that these entities are responsible for all the disappearances at Pine Point, not just the urban explorers. He's convinced that they've been luring people there for decades, maybe even centuries.
And he's dying. He says the doctors have given him about a month to live, and he's terrified. He thinks the entities are watching him, even in the hospital. And then he mentions this chilling detail about how the nurse saw small, wet footprints leading to his room footprints that no one else could see.
It's like they followed him back. They're not content to stay in Pine Point anymore.
So Kelly's final message is a warning. Stay away from Pine Point, especially during the new moon. Watch out for the signs, the children's voices, the circular footprints.
He believes that what happened to him could happen to anyone who gets too close.
It's a sobering thought that scientific ambition can go so horribly wrong that we might be sharing this world with entities that we don't understand, and that they might be a lot closer than we think.
And it makes you wonder what other forgotten places might be out there harboring similar secrets, places where history and folklore and the truly unexplained all collide.
Yeah, it's a chilling reminder that we don't know everything that's out there, and some things are best left undisturbed.
Definitely something to think about.
For sure. Welcome back, deep divers. You know the drill. You send us your sources, and we take a deep dive together into the depths of information.
Into the rabbit hole.
That's it. And this time, well, let's just say the rabbit hole might lead to somewhere a little unsettling. We're talking about the account of a journalist, Daniel Harwood.
Fascinating. And unsettling how?
Well, this journalist, Harwood, he wrote his account while hospitalized. He was diagnosed with a rare form of temporal lobe epilepsy.
Oh, I see where this is going. So the question becomes, are we dealing with actual events, or are we dealing with the manifestations of a neurological condition?
Right, and that's the hook. Because even with this diagnosis, even facing this, medical reality, Harwood, he absolutely insists that what he experienced at this place called Lost Lake in northern Minnesota, well, it was real, and it's still affecting him to this day.
That right there adds a whole layer of intrigue to it. It's one thing to have a spooky story, but when the person telling it is convinced it was real, despite a condition that could explain it away, that's when it gets really interesting.
It definitely grabs your attention. So for you, dear listeners, we're going on a deep dive specifically tailored for you into Harwood's account. We're going to examine his claims, scrutinize the evidence, and really try to understand the implications of what he says he found at this forgotten lake.
So we're not just dipping our toes in the water here.
No. We're diving headfirst into a world of, well, unexplained phenomena. We're talking potential government cover-ups and a place where reality itself seems to bend and break. It's not your typical weekend getaway in the woods. So, to start, I think it's crucial to look at the source himself, Daniel Harwood. What do we know about this journalist?
Well, right off the bat, what stood out to me was Harwood's background. He's not some, friend, blogger, or conspiracy theorist. This is a respected journalist. He specialized in unexplained phenomena and abandoned places. The guy had a reputation for meticulous research, And he'd written for credible publications, so this isn't someone known for making things up.
That's important to note. This isn't just some internet rumor mill. This is a journalist with a history of solid work. And he's the one stepping into the bizarre here.
Yeah.
And what was the catalyst? What sparked this whole investigation?
An anonymous email, the classic setup for a mystery. A nameless sender, coordinates for this lost lake, and a message that reads, "The disappearances, government cover-up at Lost Lake."
Yeah.
It's like something straight out of an X-Files episode.
Talk about a hook. I mean, come on. Who wouldn't be intrigued by that? But it wasn't just the message. There were also attachments to this email, right?
Scanned documents, supposedly from the 1960s. And they had Department of Defense headers, the kind that get conspiracy theorists all riled up.
Of course, heavily redacted, which, adds to the mystery. What's hidden beneath those blacked out lines? It makes you wonder what they were so desperate to conceal.
Absolutely. And from what we can make out, these documents reference some pretty out there stuff. Phrases like spatial anomalies and get this, interdimensional research.
Wow. Okay, so for our listeners, spatial anomalies, that could suggest some kind of distortion, like a warp in space itself. Beyond our usual understanding of, how space works, and interdimensional research, well, that's wading into the territory of other realities, other dimensions.
Pretty heavy stuff. And it gets even more interesting when you consider the list that was attached. 17 researchers supposedly linked to this facility, all deceased, and a list of 43 civilians who'd vanished in the area, going all the way back to the 1940s.
So many missing people. That's terrifying. Did Harwood investigate that list? Were those real people?
According to Harwood, he was able to independently verify at least a dozen of those disappearances, all in northern Minnesota. So we're not talking about some fabricated list here. This is starting to feel very real, very grounded.
It suddenly becomes less like a ghost story and more like, a missing persons case. So Harwood has this email, these documents, these verified disappearances. He has to be feeling that pull that journalists need to dig deeper. What does he do?
He starts researching. He tries to find information about this lost lake. And right away, things get a little strange.
How so?
He describes it as a lake about half a mile in diameter. And the shape, well, it's perfectly circular, which is, pretty unusual for a natural lake formation.
It is a striking detail.
Yeah.
A perfect it almost feels intentional, doesn't it? Not like something nature would just create.
And what's even more strange is that it's not on any recent maps, but he does manage to find it on a 1952 USGS survey. Again, that same perfect circle. It's like a recurring motif, that perfect circle. It's got to be significant.
So the lake is missing from recent maps. But does he find any information about the facility? That meteorological research station mentioned in the email.
He digs into county records, and he finds out the land was acquired by the federal government back in 1943. And get this, it was indeed designated as a meteorological research station. But then, in 1972, it was abruptly redesignated as wilderness. Just like that, no explanation given.
A weather station. That seems like a very elaborate cover story. Why all the secrecy for something as mundane as weather research? It just doesn't add up.
Exactly. And Harwood, he's not just relying on documents, he's also using satellite imagery. And he's able to make out what appear to be ruins of buildings and maybe a dirt track leading to the area.
So there was activity there, but no clear way to get there by road. This is starting to feel deliberately hidden. So what does Harwood do? He can't just let this go, can he?
No, he can't. The journalist in him, the intrigue, it's too much. He's hooked. So he packs up his, and this is important, his rugged Jeep Gladiator Overlander. And on October 3rd, he sets off from Minneapolis.
Headed straight into the unknown.
He drives along the north shore of Lake Superior, and then he turns inland towards Grand Marais, a little town that he describes as the last outpost of civilization before you hit the real wilderness.
The edge of the map.
Yeah.
And in Grand Marais, he has an encounter that really chills me to the bone. He meets a man named William Faber, a retired Forest Service employee.
The old-timer with a story to tell?
Exactly. And when Harwood brings up Lost Lake, when he mentions the coordinates, Faber's reaction is immediate and intense. Like he's seen a ghost. It's a warning sign that Harwood, well, he just ignores.
It's like that moment in a horror movie when the locals tell the outsider to turn back, but they never listen.
Oh, absolutely. So what does Faber say? What are these warnings that Harwood so easily dismisses?
Faber confirms that the lake is deliberately left off current maps. But he also says something really interesting. He mentions that he was stationed nearby in 1969, and he claims that there were physicists and military personnel at the station. Not your typical meteorologists, right?
That lines up with the whole interdimensional research thing from the documents. And all those missing people, does Faber have anything to say about them?
He does, and it's not good. He claims the official number is way too low. He says there are more people missing than anyone admits, and he even uses this chilling phrase. He says there are people, they made us forget.
They made us forget. That's horrifying. It implies some kind of mind control, some kind of deliberate erasure of memories. That's way beyond just a spooky story.
It's a whole different level of unsettling. And then Faber, he gives Harwood a set of, well, they sound almost like rules for survival. He tells him, never stay more than 24 hours.
Okay, that's ominous but specific. I guess there's a time limit to whatever's happening at this lake. What else?
He says, never go near the water at night. And this part really struck me. He says, if your compass starts spinning near the circle of stones, turn back immediately.
The circle of stones. That must be significant. And we know Harwood's compass went haywire near the lake, so he did encounter that. But what about that final warning, the one about falling asleep? What did Faber say about that?
He said those who fell asleep there after sunset, well, they were never the same. The ones who came back, they couldn't really explain what happened, but they all talked about time, about how it stopped making sense, like they'd seen too much of it all at once.
Imagine having your perception of time fractured like that. To be unable to grasp the flow of past, present, future. It would be utterly terrifying.
And just before Harwood sets off, Faber leaves him with this final, chilling thought. He says, the government didn't close that place because the research failed. They closed it because it worked too well.
It worked too well. So whatever they were doing at that lake, whatever they unleashed, it was something they couldn't control. So despite all these warnings, despite the clear and present danger, Harwood, he decides to proceed.
He does. He presses on. The lure of the unknown, the journalist's need to see for himself, it overrides caution. He's planning to spend at least 3 days documenting the site.
3 days. In a place where time doesn't seem to work properly and people go missing, that seems, well, reckless. But then again, it wouldn't be much of a story if he turned back, would it?
I suppose not. So he continues along the Gunflint Trail, heading deeper into the wilderness. The road gets worse and worse, and his GPS starts acting up, giving him wrong directions, losing signal.
It's like the area itself is pushing back, trying to keep him out. But Harwood, he's determined. He abandons the Jeep when the road becomes impassable and continues on foot. He pushes through the dense forest, and finally he finds it. Lost Lake.
And what does he see?
He describes it as an almost perfect circle of dark, still water, reflecting the sky like a mirror. Ancient pines surround it, and there are strange rack formations. A crumbling concrete foundation, a leaning metal observation tower. It's like a place frozen in time. Abandoned, but not quite forgotten.
And what about the circle of stones? Did he see that?
He did. About 30 feet from the shoreline, just as Faber described. And just as Faber warned, his compass starts spinning wildly. He knows right then and there he stepped into something different.
Out of the ordinary.
Yeah. So, ignoring Faber's warnings, at least for now, he sets up camp near the ruins. But thankfully, he does stay clear of that stone circle. And he spends the afternoon, well, he does what any good journalist would do. He documents everything. He measures the lake's circumference.
And what was it?
Exactly 0.51 miles, a perfect circle. He examines the foundation, finds bolt holes and cable channels that suggest something more complex than just a simple weather station. And from the tower, he notices that the lake is nestled within this larger depression, almost like a bowl shape carved into the landscape.
Interesting. It's like the lake is at the center of something much larger. But what could have created such a formation?
Right. It's another one of those details that makes you wonder. And as the sun starts to set, things take a turn. The light, he describes it as strange, unnaturally vivid colors, deep, almost unsettling shadows. And it's silent, eerily silent. No birds, no animals, just silence.
That's a detail that always gets to me, the absence of natural sounds. It's like nature itself is holding its breath. What happens next?
This is where the story takes a really bizarre turn. Harwood is taking photographs documenting the scene, digital photos, right? But when he looks at the images, something's wrong.
What do you mean wrong?
The images show things that he didn't see when he was taking the pictures. Smears of light, strange reflections.
Wow.
And the most unsettling thing, Dark figures, elongated, almost shadowy figures, standing at the edge of the water. He swears they weren't there.
Hold on. So he's saying there are things showing up in the photographs that he didn't see with his own eyes.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
And it gets worse. His satellite phone, dead. His emergency radio, completely useless. He's totally cut off from the outside world.
Isolated, alone, surrounded by the unknown.
And as if that's not enough, his laptop starts acting up too. The clock keeps resetting, showing impossible dates. And the battery on his devices, they drain incredibly fast. But his solar charger, that shows impossible energy levels. It's like the basic laws of physics are breaking down around him.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It's like the technology itself is being affected by whatever's at that lake.
Right. It's reacting to something it can't understand. And then he feels it. A pulsing sensation, like a vibration in the air. And it's coming from the direction of that stone circle.
The stone circle, it's like it's the epicenter of all this strangeness.
It definitely seems that way. So naturally, Harwood has to investigate. He points his flashlight toward the circle and he sees something incredible. The air above the stones, it's shimmering, like heat haze, but it's a cool evening. And the pulsing, it intensifies. He even sees a glimpse of something moving between the stones, a fleeting movement that shouldn't be possible.
Oh, I can see why he'd want to get out of there.
He hightails it back to his Jeep and seeks refuge in the camper for the night. But the lake, he's not done with him. He has these vivid, disturbing dreams. But they're not just dreams, they're more like visions. He's seeing the lake across different time periods, strange figures and that dark shape rising from the water. It's like the lake is invading his mind.
So he's being bombarded by images, by information he can't process. It's no wonder he's terrified. What happens when he wakes up?
He wakes up and he's completely disoriented. His watch says 3:1 a.m., but the light outside suggests it's late afternoon. His phone, however, still shows the same date. Time, it seems, is not behaving itself at Lost Lake.
That must have been incredibly disorienting to have your internal clock completely thrown off.
And it's not just the time that's off. The entire world outside has changed. The colors are hyper-vivid. The shadows are deeper, darker. The air itself feels thick, heavy. And the lake, it's not just reflecting the sky anymore. It had this oily sheen with shifting patterns of color, like rainbows moving across the surface.
That's bizarre.
And some of the patterns, they almost look like symbols or letters. It's like the lake is trying to communicate somehow. And he feels this pull towards the water, this urge to go in, a magnetic pull he can't resist.
You know, that's an element that you often hear in stories about these strange places, this idea that the location itself exerts some kind of influence, drawing people in.
Absolutely. It adds this whole other layer of fear to the story. You're not just in danger from whatever might be lurking out there. You're in danger from the place itself. It can make you act against your own will. But Harwood, despite this pull, he manages to resist. For now, anyway. He goes back to the ruins and he notices new details. There are these strange grooves in the concrete, almost like concentric circles. And he sees markings that look like equations, complex mathematical formulas.
More evidence that this was no ordinary weather station.
Right, this was something else.
And his camera?
It completely freaks out. It starts showing these impossible images. The location is suddenly empty, then it's filled with equipment and people in lab coats, then it's underwater, all flickering rapidly like it's catching glimpses of different realities.
Different layers of time. And then he finds himself drawn back to that circle of stones.
He's walking towards it, but he has no memory of making that decision. Like something is compelling him, forcing him to go closer. And the circle itself, it's changed again. The stones seem taller now, and they have those same symbols etched into them. And in the center, there's a fire pit with blackened stones. It just appeared out of nowhere.
It's like the place is alive, shifting, changing, mocking him maybe. And his compass, it starts acting up again.
This time it's not spinning. It's pointing directly at the center of the circle, unwavering. And the pulsing, it's become audible now. A deep hum accompanied by high-pitched tones that sound like a language, an alien language, in time itself. It starts skipping, stuttering. He's losing his grip on reality.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like. To be surrounded by such strangeness, to have your very senses betraying you.
He goes back to the Jeep, trying to regain some kind of control. He grabs his Geiger counter, his EMS detector. Both of them go crazy. Off the charts. And the EMF meter, they're pulses in time with that hum from the circle.
So there's definitely some kind of energy there, something measurable, but what is it?
Right. And this is where it gets really, really disturbing. He opens his journal and he finds changes.
Changes? What do you mean?
Entries from earlier in the day, they've been rearranged. Some of them have been replaced with those symbols he keeps seeing. And there are new entries, dated for the following day, describing things he hasn't experienced yet, including an entry about him entering the lake at sunset and encountering some kind of multi-dimensional entity.
Hold on. He's reading about events that haven't happened yet.
It's like his future is bleeding into his present. And as the sun begins to set, those long shadows stretching towards the lake, he feels this overwhelming exhaustion. His thoughts are jumbled, fragmented. He's losing himself.
So he's exhausted, disoriented, losing his grip on reality.
But he decides to make one final circuit of the lake, just to, document as much as he can before it gets dark. And he finds something else. His own boot prints, leading into and out of the water. But the treads on the boots, they've been altered. They match the symbols on the stones.
It's like the lake is marking him, branding him.
And then he looks at the lake, and it's as if it's on fire. The setting sun has turned the water blood red, and he's so drained, so exhausted. He's pulled back to his laptop, compelled to write. But it's not him writing. Not really. It's like something is dictating, forcing his fingers to move. And the document, it's a chaotic mess, past, present, future, all jumbled together, like the lake itself is trying to tell its story.
The story that defies our linear understanding of time.
And then he wakes up. But he's not at his camper. He's lying on a dock, a wooden dock extending out into the lake. But he has no memory of ever seeing a dock before. And his laptop is gone, his clothes are soaked. It's as if he's been pulled from the water.
Pulled from the water. But what about the lake itself? How has it changed?
The lake is glowing now. From beneath the surface, this pulsing blue-green light, the same color as that light from the stone circle, and the sky above, it's wrong. There are 3 moons, and the stars, they're in constellations he doesn't recognize. He knows then, without a doubt, he's crossed over. He's somewhere else.
He's gone beyond the veil of our reality. And what does he see in this other place?
He sees figures all around the lake. Translucent, ghost-like figures, dressed in clothes from different time periods, and they all have the same lost look in their eyes. It's the missing people, trapped there, caught in these fragmented moments of time, lost in the lake's eternity.
It's a fate worse than death, isn't it? To be suspended in time, unable to move on. And what about the entity? The dark shape from his dreams?
He sees it, moving beneath the surface of the water, the glowing patterns intensifying, forming a massive shape that seems to shift and undulate. He knows instinctively that this is what the government was studying, and it's reaching for him.
He needs to get out of there.
He runs towards the stone circle. But his movements are slow, sluggish. The world around him is flickering, unstable, and those figures, they just watch him. He knows he can't escape. Not really. But maybe he can warn others. Maybe he can send a message back.
A message through time. But how?
The entity, it's getting closer. The water from the lake, it's flowing inland now, like it's defying gravity. And the stones of the circle, they're glowing brighter, pulsing with that energy. He reaches the center of the circle, and there, he finds his laptop. Open. With a single document on the screen. The warning he's writing right now. He understands then. Time is not linear here. It's all happening at once.
It's a paradox. He's writing the warning as he's experiencing the events that lead to the warning.
And in that moment, knowledge floods his mind. He understands the nature of the lake. It's a dimensional junction, a thin spot between realities. And the government, they were trying to exploit it. But they weakened the barrier, made it unstable. And that entity, it's trying to break through.
It's a terrifying thought, to think that our reality is just one thin membrane away from something else.
And he knows how to stop it, temporarily at least. He knows how to stabilize the membrane to buy some time. His memories of the return are fragmented. He remembers getting back to the Jeep, driving away, the world flickering around him. He's found by state troopers. They say he's been missing for 3 weeks. But for him, it felt like days. Time is broken.
Broken by Lost Lake. And what about Harwood? What happened to him after he returned?
He's changed. His hair is white now. And he has cellular damage. Like, he's been exposed to high levels of radiation. And the photos he took, they show different things to different people. It's like the strangeness followed him back.
It's a reminder that what happens at Lost Lake, it doesn't stay at Lost Lake.
And his laptop. The battery's always at 100%. It never grains. It's like a piece of Lost Lake is still with him.
But the worst part...
Sometimes. He sees through the eyes of his other selves. The ones still trapped at the lake, he can see them, feel them. He's been fractured across time and dimensions.
A fate worse than death. And what's his message? What does he want us to know?
His warning is simple. Stay away from Lost Lake. He doesn't remember the coordinates anymore, but he says if you ever find yourself at a perfectly circular lake in northern Minnesota, run. Don't take pictures. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep there after sunset. Because the fate that awaits is worse than death. It's fragmentation across infinite dimensions.
A chilling story. A warning we should all heed. What can we make of all this?
Harwood's account, it's unsettling. The mystery of Lost Lake, the government's research into the unknown, the disappearances, the bending of reality, and that terrifying encounter with something beyond our comprehension. It forces us to ask some really big questions.
It does. Questions about the nature of reality itself, about the limits of our understanding. And maybe, just maybe, it forces us to consider the possibility that there are things out there, things beyond our perception, that we're simply not meant to understand.
Places like Lost Lake, hidden in the forgotten corners of our world, waiting to be discovered, or maybe waiting to discover us.
That's a thought to keep you up at night.
Until next time, deep divers, stay curious.
Yeah.
But stay safe.